Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about my predictions, astrological predictions for the week of May 13th, 2019. First, let's do a quick recap of predictions for the previous week, the week of May 6th. I have made predictions as far long ago as November of 2018 that this week will see a major drop in the stock market on May 6th and 7th. Followed by a reversal by May 10th, which was Friday. And indeed, that's what we've seen. We have seen the entire week really saw really major market moves based on the concerns about the trade war between the US and China. And finally, on Friday, things went up. I did think that maybe the market will reverse as early as Wednesday, but it took all the way till Friday for it to actually reverse. I also made predictions more generally that regardless of the directions, that moves on Monday through Thursday will be pretty large in size, and indeed we saw 100-point moves in major market indexes. So let's see, I also made specific predictions for the US that there would be concerns about like Navy, oil, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and topics of that nature. And we did see some news on Monday about US sending some military Navy ships to various regions, such as, I guess, Iran and the South China Sea. So there were some concerns about that. I wouldn't say concerns, but rather tensions. Let's see. I also made predictions that, and again, those were running for the last few weeks, so it's not something that I was making immediately prior to last week, that there will be news about major international contracts and agreements coming up between the 7th and 9th of May, and indeed there were negotiations between US and China, and of course as of Friday President Trump has announced that he was increasing tariffs on I guess billions of Chinese goods from 10 to 25%, so there was a major hike with ongoing negotiations between the US and China at the same time. I also made predictions that there will be increased news related to areas like steel, metals, like different ores, precious stones, and maybe even coal. And I thought that the prices on those maybe will go down, or that there would be concerns about those topics or those commodities. And interestingly, the prices actually went up, like on the prices on the steel futures and the iron ore actually were quite high as of last Friday, as of May 10th, 2019. At the same time, the reason that they were, or one of the reasons I guess they were going up and up, is that there were news about the sort of problems with supplies, given various issues like some mine collapse, I guess, in Brazil, and supply disruptions from Australia due to just the disasters with weather. And there was also a new imposed embargo, I guess, from on the steel and some other metals imposed on Iran. It may not necessarily affect all countries, but in general, the disruptions on those supplies contributed to steel and iron ore futures actually making steep gains as of May 10th. And of course, there were ongoing news that fitted the predictions about, I guess, generally increased probability of earthquakes, and especially large earthquakes. There were continuing earthquakes of 5 and 6 point plus all over the world, and some other issues with airplanes, and multiple news about problems with airplanes, and just some tensions rising in the world. But that's an ongoing prediction that will peak at certain times of the year. And right now we're going to move on to the predictions for May 16th, and I'm going to get into those in a little bit more detail. So, as I said, there are ongoing influences, specifically Pluto conjunct Saturn in Capricorn, that, and right now actually they're also joined by the moon nodes there. So those usually correspond with really serious problems, either geopolitical problems or major disasters, earthquakes, or some other turbulences in the world. And we do have some rising tensions, US-China trade war. We have these negotiations about Brexit, so sort of major issues like that. And we also have increased number of major earthquakes all over the world. But specifically for this week and the upcoming weeks, we will see increase in those events or intensity of these events and these issues. And that actually will start this week, May 16th onward, and will peak, I guess, temporarily in June of this year. So through about July 28th, there will be this really long period where we will see additional increase in earthquakes, tensions between different governments, and again, large probability, or rather increased probability for really major disasters, such as something that contaminates the land with a chemical or oil spill, or even a nuclear waste, breach, or some mine collapse, and again, on the really large scale that becomes known. There's also strong probability of agriculture, sort of farmlands being affected either through pollution from, as I said, natural disaster or from an accident, and or there even may be some decisions by some governments or corporations that basically the policies that are implemented are irresponsible, and or just genuine mistake is made, and unfortunately it may lead to contamination of land and or basically public health concerns, particularly associated with either land contamination or pollution, or contamination of the food supply, and or there may be increased, again, all over the world, concerns about like bank security of assets, real estate prices, and security of basically homeland security, where countries will be kind of trying to secure their borders a little bit more and to make sure that, again, their land is safe and their food is secure, and basically like focus on surviving and focusing also on establishing I guess government that is strict, that's able to protect things by imposing either stricter rules, controls, or borders. And this is going to be, again, an influence that continues on through 2020, but in 2019, this new period, not new, but rather the next intense period where this will be peaking is actually around June, May, June, July, especially June. And in May, we will see kind of this slow ramping up, where we will kind of hear some of the ramblings of it. Maybe some earthquakes will start increasing in certain parts of the world, or some tensions will start building, some military tensions. And so those may culminate in some major events, especially around June 9th through 21st. And at that time, we will also have a greater probability than usual for like a major earthquake, like I said, disaster, and so forth. And the issues will be either associated with, like I said, governments, large corporations, where there's some tensions between governments, or between leaders in the government, as well as focus on domestic issues. So each of the countries may be focusing on kind of securing their borders and also securing their businesses, kind of focusing on making sure that their nation is provided for, and or there may be turbulences on the home front where basically like a civil war, or sort of disagreements at home, or domestic businesses basically protesting that their government is not taking care of them properly, and or literally, like I said, like a flooding or pollution that affects especially land, farmers, real estates, or any assets, anything that's like been saved. If there's a grain and it's been saved over time, or money sitting somewhere in a bank, and sort of security of it will be in question. And I did put on my blog at tolstunka.com, I do specify dates between May 16th and July 8th that I think will be affected the most, but as a general rule, between 9th and 21st of June, I would say that would be the most critical period. But there's some other dates also of interest such as June 23rd, may see increased focus specifically on like wet weather, oil, chemicals, navy, international agreements, or travel or shipments. So there may be some big problems, and that would be likely also a day of large market moves as well. So other ongoing predictions I repeated from last week. Ongoing prediction is that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg may experience either health or some other problems in May and June of 2019, and also ongoing probability for China that there's an increased probability of basically earthquakes, disasters, problems for like Navy, and some tensions that involve oil or pollution, pharmaceuticals, especially and shipments, especially over water or railroad. So let's see, for the specific market moves for each day of the week, this overall looks like a down week to me. On Monday, I think there's about 55% slight up probability for the markets, and the rest of the week I believe the markets will continue going down. And this week I would say it's the worst. However, May 15th through 17th, so that's Wednesday through Friday, will have the greatest probability of, again, some problems, tensions, earthquakes, disasters, or basically mudslides, military tensions, as well as mining accidents, underground collapses, industrial accidents, and so forth. In addition, also around the 16th through the 18th, so that would be Thursday through Saturday, we will also have an increased probability of sort of surprising or sudden news about things like banks, finance, as well as maybe farming or construction, real estate, but also currencies, and then particularly there may be increased like large scale moves in the Forex market, and especially for the EUR-USD there may be like a large move there. And at the same time we will have some aspects to the US chart that usually coincide with again larger than usual kind of changes in the currency value and value of gold and silver. So that kind of coincides, and that would be Thursday through Saturday of this week. And similarly also at the end of the week there may be some surprising news that relate to IT, high-tech, telecoms, airspace, electric power companies, and like electric cars, for example, like Tesla of course comes to mind, but really any company that produces either some electronic gadgets or again provides power. So there may be surprising changes in value of either products that those companies produced, in the value of the companies, or in their like earnings, or change in sort of how valuable the products are perceived. The value may potentially go up, and or their earnings may unexpectedly go up, and or there might be news about some new innovative kind of approaches, or just new sudden change in the direction, or really kind of a crazy ideas, such as I don't know, some crazy outfit or new clothing line that's super innovative, that somehow combines clothing and electricity, or is food that's produced and grown in the lab, or using robots for say in agriculture, or producing some extravagant clothing, but it's very utilitarian or really futuristic, or maybe growing food in space, or maybe women robots, or like fashion that somehow is either made to make everybody kind of look like they don't have a gender, or fashion that somehow makes people look like robots or aliens, but something really like crazy, outrageous. And or it may also have to do with things like sugar prices, for example, may go up, and or precious stone, or some pastries and desserts, something that again somehow has to do with either artificial environment, space, labs, so maybe like precious stones that are grown maybe in space, or using electricity in the lab somewhere, or are used again for space exploration, some sort of combination, or maybe clothing that is specifically made to be used in space. So something along those lines where things are innovative and combine areas like, again, fashion industry, growing, maybe farming, especially things like, you know, sugar, any of the, I guess, plants from which sugar can be derived, as well as like clothing and precious stone and things like pastries. So I guess all of those are really covered under Venus. And so in those areas, there might be either surprising changes in value, most likely up, and or just surprises in the sense that the ideas that we'll hear next week about those kind of topics may be just really new and innovative. And in the US for Friday of next week, May 17th, there may be some minor news, some minor stressful news about communication and transportation industries. So maybe the earnings may be reported as kind of lower than expected, and or stock value goes down, or there may be some additional news about taxes, tariffs, loans, debt, etc. And so again, the currency value may fluctuate at the same time. So it's possible that, like I said, the EUR-USD, I would be watching Forex news very closely, May 16th through the 18th. And associated with that, there may be some moves in gold and or silver as well. So let's see, the highlight, like I said, of the next week, 15th through 17th, potential disasters and or earthquakes, and 16th through the 18th, bigger moves in Forex and some surprises related to currencies, finance, and or things that have to do with like agriculture, farming, sugar, sweets, and or fashion. So I don't really, I think it's going to be a super stressful week. Like I said, mostly down, but not as stressful. But the more stressful time may be coming up, so we may see some build up towards what may be coming sometime early to mid-June, which may see more of a, like I said, difficult time either geopolitically with increased tensions in the world, and or just a time where we may witness some large disasters that unfortunately may affect, you know, farmers, and or basically have nations worry about their public health. So that's it for me for this week. Hopefully it wasn't too long and boring. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and everybody have a great week, and I'll report to you next week how well my predictions have fared. Okay, see ya.